Hello, everybody, and welcome to another interesting and exciting lecture on the topic of relational databases. And specifically today, we're talking about the SQL programming language. As we begin our journey down this road of learning about SQL, I think it's very important for you to understand some things about SQL and about relational databases. Specifically, where did SQL come from and why do we even study it? So that's what this little lecture is all about. So join me as we go down this road. What is this? This is a picture of a very old car, but there's something very interesting about this old car, and that is this car has a engine that uses what we call internal combustion. Okay, now I don't know what you know about how cars work, but basically you put gasoline in the car and the engine brings in gasoline, it compresses it, and a spark plug fires, and that's what makes the car go, right? An internal combustion engine. And that was invented more than 100 years ago, like 130 years ago. People invented the internal combustion engine, and it was used in cars for the last over 100 years. People have been using this same technology in automobiles, and guess what? We're still using it. If you drive a car, the chances are, if it's not electric, it's using a gasoline-powered internal combustion engine. So it's very old technology, over 120 years old, but we still rely on it every day. Millions of people use the same old technology to get from one place to another in their cars. Now, why do I mention about old technology like the internal combustion engine? Well, it's kind of similar when we look at relational databases. So the relational database technology, that is the underlying engine when we use SQL. That relational database technology was first invented in the 1970s, 50 years ago. Yet, about 70% of all the databases out there in industry being used now are relational. So most of the databases being used today in industry are using technology that's about 50 years old. So yeah, it's old technology, but yeah, we're still using it very heavily. In fact, in 2020, folks in industry spent over $30 billion in purchasing new relational database software technology. So think about that. Something that's 50 years old is still being very, very widely used. And to use a relational database, we use the SQL, structured query language. We use that to work with our relational databases. And SQL, as a technical skill, is one of the most in-demand tech skills out there now in the marketplace. So it's a really good idea that you're taking this class because you're going to be gaining a technical skill that is in wide demand. So where did SQL come from? Many years ago, back in the 1970s, there was a mathematician, Dr. Edgar F. Codd, working for IBM, which at the time was the world's largest computer company. And as a mathematician, Dr. Codd got to thinking, we need a better way of creating databases. And he took the concepts of relational algebra and applied them to the concept of storing and retrieving business data in relations. And as you've learned in the prior course, within this specialization on databases, that relations are the same thing as tables. And so Dr. Codd came up with this idea that we can store data in tables, which are relations, and those tables can be related to each other by keys that are within the tables, primary keys and foreign keys. And I can store data in these tables and retrieve the data using the structured query language. And SQL, the structured query language, is actually based on the branch of mathematics called relational algebra. It's not really critical that you become an expert in relational algebra. In fact, we're going to take a very, very brief look at the relational algebra in our next video. But for now, just know that that is where SQL came from. As Cod conceived the ideas behind relational databases and the structured query language, his ideas were further developed by two other data and software engineers working for IBM named Donald Chamberlain and Raymond Boyce. And these guys took Cod's ideas and they developed a programming language called SQL based on the relational algebra and incorporating the ideas from Dr. Cod's paper. IBM was very pleased with the prototype called System R, and they decided to redo this software for several of their platforms. And most significantly, they developed a software product called DB2 that ran on IBM mainframes. And that became commercially available in 1983. And it's still out there. In fact, I have a slide coming up where you will see that IBM DB2 is still one of the leading relational database software products out there that you can buy. At the same time, a company called Relational Software, Inc., which they renamed themselves and became the Oracle Corporation, they recognized the value of what E.F. Cod had conceived and what Chamberlain and Boyce developed. Oracle recognized that, and they developed their own SQL-based relational database management software. And in June of 1979, Oracle released that, and they called it Oracle version 2. And Oracle is the largest selling database software in the world now. And here's where it came from. These are its roots. This is showing us that even though it's 50 years old, relational database software still holds about 70% market share for all the database products out there. The NoSQL database systems, which now compose about 30% of the market share out there, are gaining ground. And as people in industry need to figure out how can they cope with big data, they are turning more toward NoSQL systems. And so these numbers will change over time over the next few years, and we'll see more NoSQL market share and less relational market share. But the point is this: now it's still a very large market share. And that's why we take time to learn about relational databases in SQL. This slide from Statista.com shows us, based on a point system that they came up with, based on how many people are using this software, how many jobs are out there for this software, how many people are buying the software. They came up with a score. And here you can see the top 10 database software products listed by their scores. And who do we see here? We see Oracle, and we see MySQL, and Microsoft SQL Server, and Postgres. These top 4 database software products are the reason why we say that relational database software takes up 70% of market share, because they have the highest scores of who's using them. Coming in at number 5 is MongoDB, which is the largest selling, most widely used NoSQL database system. And after Mongo, then we see IBM DB2, which is invented a long time ago, but it's still out there taking up a large portion of the market share. So this is from Statista.com, just showing you that these relational systems are holding a significant portion of the market share that's out there. Now, this is a graph from Dice.com that just shows you, this is from 2019, so it's a couple of years old, but it's showing you that within Dice.com, which is a website where employers post job openings and tech people post resumes. And through Dice.com, people can find employment. And Dice.com showed nearly 200,000 postings in July through September of 2019. SQL was their most in-demand programming skill for these job postings. Nearly 200,000 job postings looking for people that know SQL. So it just, emphasizes that this technology, even though it's very old, it's still very much in demand. Yet another slide showing a similar concept from Tiobe.com. Now, Tiobe is a software company. They took their name from a play from the late 19th century called The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde, who's a playwright. But anyway, Tiobe.com has ranked a lot of programming skills and compared their rankings from December of 2020 to last month, December of 2021, and how these programming languages are used or in demand in the marketplace. So you can see languages. Some of you may know some of these languages: Python and C and Java and C++ and C#, etc. But look at SQL. In 2020, SQL was number 10 in this list, and in 2021, it moved up to number 9. So according to Tiobe.com, the SQL programming language is within the top 10 of in-demand programming languages. So let me summarize. When we talk about the origins of SQL, where did SQL come from? It's been around since the 1970s. It's old technology, but it still dominates the industry. Relational databases and SQL programming skills are very widely used in industry, and SQL programming skills are very much in demand in the marketplace. So that's what I have to say about the origins of SQL. I will see you in the next lecture where we'll talk very briefly about the relational algebra. Thank you.